Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jay Bernardis. I'm the CISO here at Anecdotes, and welcome to our webinar about the ISO Trifecta. This is an exciting time for me. I interview a lot of people on podcasts, and I rarely, if ever, get to interview my actual own team, who are far better in every way than I am. So I am super excited for this one. I don't need an introduction, so I'll introduce and bring Adeel on, who's going to be the entire content and wizardry of this whole time. I'd like to encourage you all as well that this is a fully open conversation. So use the chat, ask any questions you want, disagree, throw in your comments. Like I want this to be fully open and to go wherever it's going to go. Without further ado, though, Adeel, please come on and introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Jake. I haven't seen you. I God knows how long it feels like. I think last half an hour or so. Hi, everyone. I'm Adeel. I am the InfoSec Risk and Compliance Manager, and Anecdotes started here in January. Feels like yesterday. At the same time, feels like I've been here all my life. So my background is GRC. Most of my focus is on mostly SaaS companies or experiences from the SaaS companies. And I'm glad to be here and trying to share whatever I can.
Thank you, Adeel. And thank you everyone else who's joined. Like I said, use the chat, speak to each other, speak to me, speak to Adeel. This is an interesting one for me. I'm going to be completely open and transparent and deal my full faces. So when he joined us, I told him, don't worry, our GRC practice is going to be fairly chill. And then we went to do our renew our SOC 2, and I said, why don't we just do the whole load of ISOs at the same time? And he said, what do you mean? I said, let's just do them all. Like 27,001, 27,701, and 42,001. And by the way, you've got about 3 months maximum to work this all out. And that is where this story starts. And that's what we want to talk about today is a bit about like what is the ISO trifecta? Why do we care? Why does it matter? A bit about how we did it, because I think that we did it obviously using our own tool and our own product and our own know-how and our own hackability in a time frame and in a way that's pretty unheard of. Adeel's going to show some parts of what we did. I'm then going to be fairly candid and open about the stuff that we could have done better or lessons we should have learned, or the bits where you pretty much can't automate it, even though we hoped you could. And then we'll open to some questions at the end. But again, like I say, if you have questions, please interrupt, interject, just stick them in the chat. So let's start with the top. Adeel, what the hell is the trifecta? What is an ISO trifecta and why should I care?
So I think the word trifecta, I was never introduced or never knew that it existed. It came from, as you probably remember as well, from Jack Ramsey, right? From Swing Away. So this one for us, for me, it's like the almost like the holy trinity of assurance, to be very honest, because it's such a good overlap between the controls and how these three ISO standards work and how they overlap as well. So it's amazing to see that once you have one or once you're preparing for one, you're almost in other words, you are preparing for all three of them in a specific categories in that sense. So
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
let's strip back. Again,
Yeah.
anyone who wants to ask any questions, please put them straight into the webinar chat and let's use it there. But what are the three ISOs? Like
Oh yeah, sure.
TLDR, what are they? What do they cover? Why
Of
do you
course.
need all three?
Of course. So we're talking about here ISO 27001, which is the information security framework or standard. Then we are talking about ISO 27701, which is the privacy related one. And then we're talking about the most hot in the topic at the moment, which is ISO 42001, and that is the AI governance, which overlaps, and that covers the AI governance part of the security side as well.
Okay, why bother? Like we're not the only one. There are not many companies. I think there's less than 50 who have done all three. Predominantly in tech, quite often in security in tech. So why do them? Who are they for? Like, is this just like a show-off statement that we've done? Which I think is cool anyway. But or is there a rationale and a reason
It is.
behind
It
it?
is very cool. It is very cool. But all at the same time, I think when you're talking from the practice side of GRC or information security, I think these are the baselines which every company who deals with any sort of data should be practicing, especially nowadays when AI is everywhere, privacy is the most at risk, and having those practices which were maybe probably most of the companies have put in place for information security, use that overlap from the other two standards and make sure that you're secure. That is, of course, is very cool, but at the same time provides you this level of comfort with your clients and level of assurance with your clients will be looking for if they want to do business with you. And that is the first line of defense, in other words, of saying that yes, you can talk to us. We do know how it works and where the security risks are. How do you deal with privacy related items? And also, we are governing our AI usage as well, no matter if we are developing in-house or we're using a third-party tool.
And I was thinking about you highlighted there, but I think it's like this AI step backwards. Like there's so much of a proliferation of AI tools right now in the space. And what I find curious is that so few companies actually have a 42001 to start with, showing that they built some kind of common framework or understanding around how they secured and how they built securely their AI features and functionalities. Then you step back and say, well, lots of companies do have some security. So 27001 is not that uncommon. It's kind of like the European or global version of SOC 2.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it. But then you step back again, and actually, if you have AI tools, you really should have 40,001. If you're going to have anything in that range, you really should be securing it with 27,001. And then there isn't really any AI capabilities that don't deal with PII or personal data at some point, meaning really you should have 27,701. So for me, like the trifecta, if you're releasing AI functionality and features into the wild, like these really are things you should have to provide assurance to your customers, which is basically what you're saying, right?
Exactly, exactly. I think that's supposed to be the baseline, or at least in my opinion, it is the baseline where you start from and then you build from there onwards to continually improve. And that is the main message. You build and then you improve. That's the message I think we should be making sure that we provide or giving as well, that it's never apply and then forget about it type of a situation, especially with ISO, and that's the key element.
And that's also an interesting question, right? Because I said I'm always pretty open and transparent the way I speak. Like ISO doesn't mean secure. Like people think you just stick these out and therefore it means like, oh, the company's got an ISO assault, it must be secure, right? There's more to it, right? Like the reality is this shows that you've considered how to secure, but it doesn't show that you're constantly maturing and building more robustly. It just shows that you've thought about it basically.
Yes, that's the baseline. And then, of course, as you progress and as you mature, that is what the framework provides. I mean, the frameworks or the management system which comes through with these ISO systems that I think encourages you to improve, to make it more robust, and then make sure that you're covering all the elements and making sure that you're not leaving any gaps anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Do you think there's anything better out there? Like we obviously chose on the ISO route, and we're SOC 2 certified as a company as well. Do you think there's other things out there that are equally of value that people should consider? Like, are there parities, or is this is the best in class?
I would say this is one of the best, like, is right at the top. But at the same time, I don't want to sort of say that the other things are not good and as good. They are, there are the frameworks, AI, RMF, and then talk about people or companies are still looking into the European Act for the AI as well. And there are several different other framework for security perspective. It really depends on the context of the business, what the requirements are, where you're looking for, what you're aiming to achieve when you're looking into that type of things. But yes, this is one of the best. You can actually one of the best standard for security for ISO 27001. How much work has been put in that space, and also how common it is to at least as soon as someone says, what is the background, within the field, I mean.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive into it a little bit. So
Sure.
for those who haven't read, we have a blog which maybe Shimmy, our voice in the sky, will share with everyone. That we released about how we did the trifecta, the relevance of it. And it's available again via anecdotes.ai. If you go through there, you'll find our various solution briefs to find in there. And Adeel obviously wrote most of this. And he put together 5 steps in there, which I think are interesting. So your 5 steps to how you achieve this were reuse what you already have,
Yeah.
perform a comprehensive gap assessment, build an integrated management system or IMS, create a unified risk methodology, and implement continuous internal audit. Before I get there, I am going to answer the 2 questions. So, Adeel, you need to get closer to your microphone. Raphael says, can we get you a
Oh,
little
yeah,
bit
okay,
higher,
sure,
a
sure.
little bit louder?
I'll
Um,
actually start speaking louder.
He's quite softly spoken. He's not like me who just shouts all the time. I'm afraid. Sorry. And then JC London. It says, what kind of AI specific tooling does Anecdotes currently have connectors for outside of CSPs? That's an interesting question. Do you want to take it or do you want me to?
You have to answer that.
Okay, fine. So currently we've got Anthropic in there as a direct out of the box build, and Notion as well. Both of whom we have quite strong relationships with, but there's a lot of capabilities you can build actually through plugin builder. So effectively inside the tool, you can build your own plugins, import your own data. And so depending on what you want to pull, JC, maybe it's an offline conversation, you can ping me on LinkedIn or whatever. You can actually pull anything effectively. And if there's a data source there and there's API connectivity or exposed APIs, then we can work with how you pull the data for you. So I hope that answers the question, JC. But if not, like I said, ping me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find, and I'll give you a better answer. Good. So again, any more questions? Keep firing on the Q&A, or keep speaking wherever you can. The Q&A looks to be working better than the Anecdotes chat because I can only seem to write to host and panelists. So I don't know if you can write to me. But anyway, back to our 5 steps. Reuse what you've got, gap assessment, IMS, unified risk methodology, implement continuous internal audit. That's how you say you do this.
Yeah.
You've got some demos to videos to share. I would caveat we use demo videos for 2 reasons. One is because if anyone on this call has ever demo live, you know it's a terrible idea to ever do, and it's doomed to fail immediately as you try. And the second being that because we did this ourselves, we're actually demoing from our own internal instance, which also means there's some data in there that we have to scrub. And it's very hard to scrub data live. And there's too much of a risk of exposing them we shouldn't expose. And nobody wants that either. So we've got some videos we've pulled, and then Adeel will talk to them as well. But go ahead. You start wherever you want to start from a starting point, and
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
let you get out the conversation.
Sure. Thank you, Jake. Thank you very much. I think, yes, those 5 steps are, of course, the high level steps, or let's say the turning points, in order to get those things going and achieving that trifecta. I have to put that out as well that we had the ISO 27001 certificate, and this was the recertification year, meaning almost like a new certificate, right? So we had the bare bones, we had the framework in our platform, and that's where the reusability came in place. And because we had the framework already in place in Anecdotes platform, our internal platform, I went and implemented the 2 other frameworks within the platform, and it immediately showed me where am I with that, these new 2 frameworks. And I will just quickly show my screen. By the way, yes, as Jim was saying, it's a video demo, and I will be pausing, discussing between with Jake, and explaining what I'm trying to show here, and then we will continue with that. I'm
Adeel,
gonna,
before you show it, let me interject quickly because Mike asked a question I think is interesting. He said, what sets Anecdotes apart from other GRC tools when working towards the trifecta? Why, if at all, are we better positioned than other GRC platforms, either autonomous or like automated, like the other competitors we have in space, or traditional ones? Why is it different for us, or is it
so
not?
yeah, so I haven't really used anything. I'm a customer turned into employee. I demoed quite a few GRC platform when I was a customer of Anecdotes, and I preferred Anecdotes on several other GRC platform at that point in time. And now, what I felt was, as we say, that it's the capabilities of the platform, the reusability of the platform, and the items we will be talking about in the next 10 to 15 minutes. You will see that's what my sort of, let's say, focus is, that it's easier. It makes your life easier, and then you can easily compare it with other frameworks if you want to from here on.
Yeah. Let me add to that. So also two-time ex-customer before I joined Anecdotes, it's a common trend that a lot of people who work for us have been customers before. Um, I think there's 2 things that sets apart. I think one is that we are data-based. I think ISO is built heavily on your ability to understand, to interpret, and to produce data and supporting evidence. Anecdotes doesn't pull a test result that shows you either do or don't comply. It pulls the data that evidences your compliance status. So I think that helps us in this perspective to start with. And I think the second is the customization. So are you going to show the KSI automation? Is that in this demo stuff or not?
Yes, there's a part
So,
of it.
so
Yes.
as a spoiler, he's going to show this later, but like we were able to automate parts and requirements of ISO, which traditional GRC tools don't, because there's such levels of customization inside of Anecdotes that other vendors in our space aren't able to offer because they're not based on data. That's a long answer to a short question, but hopefully it gave you the answer. Mike, again, any further questions, feel free to ping us. If not, a deal, I'll shut up and you carry on.
No, I think, Jake, that will, you're absolutely right. I think once we get to that point, it will clarify what you just said as well. So I'll share my screen quickly, and please let me know, Jake, when you're able to see, and then we'll.
Yeah, got it.
Perfect.
If everyone else can see that as well, if you can't in the Q&A, say you can't, but I'm assuming everyone else can because I can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. So the very first point, reusability. So as you can see here, this is our frameworks library currently, and it shows. I will just play this video. So in here, you can see, I will scroll down and I'll show you whatever frameworks are currently available in our library. It shows where you are at. Of course, that is a rough estimation of percentage, but it's still better than not knowing where you are when you go in. So when you have, sorry, let me just stop there. Um, there we go. And then, of course, that's where if I quickly go back, Jake, sorry, in here, you can see that where we are at, what we're doing. If you add framework in if you adopt this, then of course, when you can go in, look at the controls and actually requirements. And that's what I'll show you in a minute as well when we go to the objective point. That's the next part anyway. And that gives you almost like a comfort level, or at least tells you what sort of effort you need to put in there, or what or sort of the time you're going to be saving if you do adopt this new framework. Jake, does this should I move on to the next one? Is that okay to go to the second point straight away?
Yeah, keep going. I think most people understand the concept of like working out where you are from a gap assessment kind of stance and seeing where you are. So I think, yeah, let's move on.
Yes. So the next part for me was, I think, which I wanted to highlight was the point you mentioned earlier about the objectives, ISO IMS objectives, and that is usually is the part which is often I like to use the word in ISO. It's been kept out of your management system, and it's very manual, very how should I put it? It's very difficult to automate in the sense of bringing it back and showing it in evidence rather than apart from anything than screenshots. And using this way of bringing, I mean, what Anecdotes given me the ability to do this. So what we did was in here, I'll just play the video and I'll move into the next section of it, where what we did was 2 seconds as I get into that part now. Um, yeah, here we are. So what we did was initially, first thing we did was we define our objectives in a Confluence page. That is a traditional approach. That's what we usually do, or that's what I used to do in my previous work space as well. Of course, this is all, all dummy data here, and this is not actual objectives you see on the screen. And once we have gone through and done these objectives in a Confluence page, what I did was I went ahead and made sure that all of these are having, their measurability, whatever clause it's been referenced to, or how they, what clause they cover. I described it in here, and then I went into Jira in order to implement each and every objective as a task there. And these graphs you see are actually importing that Jira project, which will come in shortly as well to show you the list of the objectives I created in Jira. Jira product. Here you are. So as you can see, these are the Jira tasks which I created and then labeled accordingly, saying, which are the ISMS related, which are the AIMS related, and which are the PRMS, I mean, privacy related tasks. Now, these are the two external systems where usually you will keep your objectives. And that's where you're gonna put the updates, what's going on, how you keeping up with it, how you monitor your progress, in other words. So now we are back in our Anecdotes instance here. And for example, I've taken the ISO 27001 6.2 clause here, which talks about the objectives. You can see this is the control right at the top. And then on the bottom, you see there's information security objective KPI custom requirement, which I created. And in this custom requirement, you see two types of evidences. One is the PDF of that Confluence page you saw. And the second part is where the magic happens, which means that I use the evidence, custom evidence builder within Anecdotes, selected my Jira project, selected a particular task type, which was IMS task, and then filtered it to show me my objectives as an evidence. So 2 seconds, here we are. So this now brings in all the objectives, showing me when it starts, what's the status, what's the creation date, what's the resolution date, also the other elements in it to see where the progress is from their side, depending on how many fields you have actually brought in. Now, when we are in here, the main question was how would we actually monitor it in a sense of saying that these don't get forgotten about. And that's what we did on that one. We used the monitoring rule section in our platform. We added a custom rule. And within that rule, I'll just show you that now. It says that any objective which is over, in progress status, but it's not been worked, there's no update on it for over 30 days, you should change that evidence status to gap. So I'll just quickly edit it and I'll show you how it actually looks like when you open this monitoring rule. There we are. So this is,
Adeel, do you want to give some context to what a rule is?
yes, the
As
monitoring.
Anecdotes speak, right? So maybe we give some
Absolutely.
context to that one.
Absolutely. Thank you. The monitoring rules are is something which we can put into almost any and every evidence which is collected in through a plugin or not a plugin. We can add the monitoring rule to set how an evidence actually, if the evidence is compliant or non-compliant, based on our requirements, based on our query, or let's say our our rules, in other words.
What you're
So
effectively speaking to is a capability for customization, right? That you can
exactly,
write things to
exactly.
say, if this happens, then we expect this to happen, therefore it's compliant, non-compliant. It's interesting because it answers a question. So Amy Knapp, who's a good friend of mine, put a question there about the most catchy acronym in history, the FFIEC was sunsetted in August this year, which will have broken the hearts of so many people. Is there any anecdotes you can do to allow for continuation of meeting those requirements in NIST CSF 2.0 for financial serve orgs? Now, what you're speaking to actually speaks to this quite well. So one is, yes, we can map to NIST CSF 2.0 out of the box anyway, so that's irrelevant. But if you want to get really super deep and keep the life and breath of the FFIEC cat, then you could actually import that specific control set, create a custom framework inside of Anecdotes, and map evidence to it to support your evidence against that specific standard, which would in some cases involve the creation of custom rules, which is exactly what Adeel has just explained. So we come full circle and back to you, my friend.
Correct. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So of course, it doesn't have to be always a gap. You can create a warning as well. So the difference between those two is if it's a gap happens, that means you can add a playbook which can then change the status of control into a gap status instead of just being in progress. So I'll just show you how it. So I usually do this using the query. And in here, I said that if the status of if one of the Jira IMS task status is in progress and is updated over 30 days ago, set it into a gap. So this is how it actually then kicks off and triggers the change in the control or in the evidence states. If I change it to do, meaning that like anything which is over 30, either in to or in progress, the monitoring rule immediately applies. It shows you that this is what's happening straight away. It kicks off. It's not waiting for something to happen at some particular point in time to give
Yeah.
you the update. So it happens straight away. It changes the status of the evidence. That means if you have then, after this setup, I'll just go back and remove the to-do bit and show you back that it just runs quickly and updates the status of the evidence. Now, once this query runs and the gap rule actually gets triggers, what we do is we then catch these triggers through our playbooks, which is again another amazing functionality within Anecdotes, is that once a trigger happens through monitoring rule, it goes and you can then set up several different type of playbooks, which you can see here, to do, trigger some action, and
I
especially
mean,
if you want to notify. Sorry.
what effectively you're doing is you've taken the ISMS or the Information Security Management System, again, really exciting acronym, which is traditionally a very boring, very static, very binary piece of documentation. You are making it live, right? You're giving it breath. So it is now being supported by real data to show what's actually happening versus what you say is happening. You can provide an order and say, here's my statements and here's the evidence to support it. Here's my objectives and here's the evidence those objectives are being met. But also you're triggering things that say, in my world, like you either create a ticket or maybe there's a Slack message that pops up to me and says, a dealer is failing his job. He's got loads of things out of compliance. Go and tell him to fix it. Like this is what we're doing. We're creating a living, breathing compliance or living, breathing ISO. And that's the first question of why Anecdotes is well positioned. That's where it starts to move, right? We're showing how you can use customization and data to create a living ISMS and therefore take your ISO from being like a one and done, very hard to evidence, very static thing to something which is changing, living, like evidenceable at any point in time. It's continuous. I think that's the cool bit.
Exactly. And I think that's whatever we are showing, whatever we're discussing at this point in time, Jake, I think this gonna be that what I applied to several different parts of ISO. So that is objective is just one example. So you can take internal audit, you can talk about, for example, if I'm talking about risk related items and stuff, if I'm talking about a specific control, which I need to make sure that I get, I don't need to come into platform, I should get alerted straight away. So all of this was part of the whole thing, the whole idea of getting continuous monitoring in place somehow. So this one quickly, I'll just go through saying that when we go into a playbook, we can set triggers. Triggers can be set up into any of the states, different status, which is control, different part of anecdotes sections, which is control, I believe, requirement, risk, evidence, and then let me just quickly play this so we can talk about this. So as you can see, requirement, user access, evidence, risk, there's several different triggers there. You can select when you choose when, you can select what happens to it. I have chosen 3 frameworks here. I don't really care who is the owner, but my action here is that I want a notification on Slack using our Slack default account into these particular monitoring channels. And then what I did was use these properties, which will give me some sort of an idea where that actual alert is coming from, why I'm having this alert. So I can add, remove whatever properties I want to add or remove here. And then once this happens, and so the monitoring rule plays and the playbook gets triggers, I get a message in this particular Slack channel saying, this is the particular framework. This is the control item, and it's changed to get go and please review it and see what needs doing. And if anything needs doing, I use Slack to create a Jira ticket as a task for myself, and that task then gets pulled in back into Anecdotes to show that what needs to be
Mm.
done or what needs to be shown there. So that is the continuous circle of making sure anything and everything which we are using for our IMS is actually being pulled back into Anecdotes. I'll stop sharing my screen for a second, Jake. And I think that's where what my idea of the items where I'm saying build an integrated management system and have an implemented continuous internal audit. Now,
But that's the point, isn't it? The internal audit is the point. You're building robustness into your compliance posture to be able to show, well, not even to show actually, to be able to know at any point in time whether you're in compliance or not. Because as soon as it falls out of compliance, you'll get a message or a ticket to show that you have done. So theoretically, no news is good news in this world. If it's silent, then that means that things continue to work, and that gives you actually, firstly, confidence, but it also gives you like an ability to kind of actually better plan how you do compliance. Full stop, because you semi-automate to that point to say, I don't need to go and do these reoccurring tasks because I'll just know when it stops working.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that was the whole idea of making sure that internal audit, when we are implementing, we're implementing in a way because we are a small team. We don't want to spend like 3 weeks auditing a full set of controls
Yeah.
once a year and then not knowing what is the status or state of those controls for the rest of the year. So
Yeah,
it,
100%. It takes time and allows people to focus on. The problem with most compliance and GRC work is that everyone spends all their time like checking and identifying risks and very little time actually remediating and fixing risks. Whereas if you can automate that side of the house, the evidence collection, the monitoring, the alerting, the continuous nature of that circle, then you can actually spend more time over here going back and actually fixing the things that you already know are broken.
exactly.
Maturing, right? I think that's the key part that every GRC team wants to get to. Cool. Carry on.
So the last item or the last part which I wanted to share or discuss was the create a unified risk methodology, and that was again part of this. Let me just play this.
By the
And
way, if anyone has any questions, continue to use the Q&A. Feel free to ask Adeel what the hell's going on at times. Oh, there you go. Look at that. As I said it, someone put a message in before I even finished my sentence. Does the platform collect evidence from AWS automatically? The answer, Raymond, is yes, in many ways. So we don't just collect evidence from AWS automatically. We collect evidence from virtually every single AWS module that exists. And not only that, you can actually go deeper and customize the specific evidence points they collect from all those AWS modules, whether that is around authentication or security, or whether that's around the actual cloud infra itself, whether that's around databases. Like you can pull whatever comes out the box, there's a hell of a lot of assets, or you can go and say, actually, I want to know this. And because of the way we've built custom APIs at the box, so every API that Anecdotes built, every collection, every integration is completely custom, you can basically ask and receive whatever you want to. So the answer is yes in every possible way. Sorry, Carol. Any more questions? Just put them in there. We'll keep answering. You're muted, by the way. Yes, I got to say on the webinar that you're muted. Oh,
I was saying to
there we
myself,
go.
I have to remember to unmute before I start speaking, but I didn't. Anyways, in here, this is a demo account. I created some risks there from our stock risk library just to show the linkage between the risk and controls and how Anecdote works. In here, you'll be able to see that it's only one risk there, which have any elements to it. I will just open that to show you that it of course brings in our risk manager. You can see that you can add the risk details. There's a risk analysis part which you can of course edit and modify as you like, as you please. And this is the main part where you go in and connect different relevant mitigating controls. And these mitigating controls then bring in, of course, treatment plan should match with what the controls are of, and you can add supporting documents to it. You can add the details of what the residual risk will be. You do manual calculation or you do residual risk automation. And within the residual risk automation, what it does is here, it's a very good, I will just pause it for a second and I'll show everyone that what the message here is that, so it calculates the level risk of medication control status and updates. Now, in that sense, what it does is when you set up your controls and you set up the maturity of your controls, it will then help calculate the impact and likelihood of those controls onto the risk. And then when you, if there's any change, if you change the status of or the maturity of the controls, it gives you an option to review it, to accept it, or to reject it. So it's not like automatically changing everything what you set up, but you have the option to change it.
So what you're saying, for those who didn't understand, is that that is risk management that is data driven and live. That is
Correct.
risk management that's being reduced and changed based on the efficacy of the controls it's tied to. And those are being assessed on their efficacy based on the data they're pulling from integration. So you're effectively saying and showing that our risk management suite inside of Anecdotes is actually not just like finger in the air maths. It's based on real data and it changes and evolves in a live state based on what's actually happening in our environment.
Correct, correct. And I was just getting into the best part here is that, of course, our risk assistant now, right? You get this option to say, okay, if you can check the treatment plan or a suggested treatment plan from this AI capability, but also you can see if there's a supporting evidence you want to add, or if there's anything else. And of course, any recommended controls, it will show you what are the recommended controls. At the moment, it's not showing it's a demo environment where I created this risk manager, but it shows you which are the relevant controls and what's the percentage of the confidence. So you can
And
check
that's an
it.
AI capability you showed there with the risk
Correct.
assistant. It will review the risks and make suggestions based on what you should do, which is
Yes.
interesting. If you look at like the future of this, like we talk a lot in the business about like agentic GRC being the future. And if you talk about what you can do from a risk stance, being able to have agent-based capabilities that can actually look at your risk, analyze the efficacy of the controls that are going on, make suggestions, action suggestions, reevaluate the effect of the suggestion, and either remove or add risks in live, like on the wing. Like that's where this is going. And at that point, like compliance becomes like real and breathing and really automated. It's not just like, yes, there's a risk and yes, there's something to say it. It's actually actioning based on the agentic workflows that are in place. I think it's interesting. Before you continue, Mike's question. It's really cool to see data-driven risk management. Mike, we're glad you like it. However, sometimes the tool will not have all the context. Valid statement. How do you override automated risk ratings, and how do you document the changes that you are making to that risk? Adeel, this is a good question for you. How do you basically, if an automation says you should do this, how do you override it and say, actually, you're wrong? Because the context you don't understand is, I don't know, those devices that you're saying are high risk actually aren't high risk because of the way they're being used. And how do you document like that decision-making process?
Yeah, so there are two ways. First of all, as I was showing that if you turn off the residual risk automation, that's first of all you get rid of automation and then you can override and do what you need to do there from manually. But this exercise, what you're taking place here, needs to be recorded somewhere, right? Whatever the change you made, you need to make sure you record saying that the risk has, been accepted. So that needs to be recorded. It has to be, as you can see here, 2 seconds. I don't know if I can scroll here. No, but there's an option here which shows that approval process, like it records everything when a risk goes through a review and approval. And that's the key part here, that if you make any change, it needs to go through a review process, right? It can be on the call, on the spot, or it can be you send that, you start that cycle, it gets approved, and then you move forward from there, and it keeps the record of that.
So there's a review and approval process. Mike's answered that question, which basically means that it can't get through the gates without someone having actually gone, yes, that makes sense. Maybe there's a world in which you get to a level of automation where if the same change gets approved X number of times, always being the same, that you can reduce that gate. But at the moment, yeah, we go through an approval process to make sure that the risk is contextually understood and correctly actually mitigated.
So I think
Cool.
with that, Jake, it really covers that the demo part of things. It is of course very short demo. It's a very short, very selective things which we showed. But I hope that gives everybody an idea of what the capabilities, and then translate that into their language or their context, their business needs, that what they are struggling with, making sure that yes, it's a Anecdote provides this platform where you can manage your controls and stuff, but there's a lot of capabilities because of the data coming into Anecdotes and having the capability of connecting into several different tools. You can play around and you can bring almost everything back into Anecdotes, so you don't have to go and show anything else to the auditor or for yourself. You can manage everything within the
No,
platform.
I think you showed some cool features. An interesting question, actually, from an anonymous attendee living in a dark and secret world. Is there a way to get the report of internal audit assessment in the platform to provide to the auditor when getting audited for ISO? Do you want to go first? Then I'll answer anything you don't answer.
So I'm just reading the question again. If there's a way to get a report of internal audit
I
assessment
think
in
they're
the
basically
platform.
saying, how do you get the
Yes,
controls in front of the auditor?
correct. So I had this conversation with our auditor when they were auditing us. It was I have an internal audit Confluence page, and that page is a live page of Jira tasks, which shows continuously what item got added into from internal audit monitoring, what was done, who worked on it, what was improved, what wasn't improved, what is where the status is, and that Confluence page and those Jira tickets are actually custom evidence brought back into Anecdotes under the internal audit control, where the auditor just goes into the control, looks at the evidence, and it say he or she can see then the whole list of things we are working in, and that's the whole idea of bringing that back in. So, in other words, I there is no need for me to give him the Confluence page anymore. Give him or her, sorry, I mean our auditor. We don't need to give a page. They can be in the platform and look at every single thing which came up as a finding or opportunity for improvement in an internal audit and audit it.
Yeah, our auditor happens to be to him, so it's a completely fair statement. But so that's the internal audit piece. I think for the broader piece of how to get the assessment into the auditor's hands, like they can either directly into the platform via an accessing via an auditor account or auditor view, Or in many cases, if they are Field Guide, or we work closely with Shellman as well, who have Audit Source or various other platforms as well, we can actually make direct connections to basically take all of the relevant evidences and data that's relevant to them from our platform and input it in an automated way directly into their audit platform. So you don't even have to take the evidence from Anecdotes and put it in. That will all happen in an automated flow. So
Mm.
you can get to the auditor very easily. Like they either go in the platform or they get it their way. But either way, the evidence is it's built to be auditable in the most easy and efficient fashion possible. Any other questions? Then feel free to fire them on. If not, Adeel. This all looks roses and sunshine. What doesn't work? What did we hit on the way where it was like, oh crap, that doesn't work?
I think the main thing was the main block. No, I wouldn't say blocker. I would say the where I struggled was there were things which we were talking internally that these are features which are being built, and
Yeah.
I needed them there, like
We
on
did a
time.
lot of that. Don't worry, it'll be built next quarter, and it wasn't built
Yes,
next quarter.
yes. So I
Sorry,
think
R&D team, you're getting shouted out in the negative way here.
but so there were so many things during that time when I was working on preparing for ISO. It were in like, almost like about to be, put out. And I'm like, yeah, can I just have it now? No, you can't, there's a testing process, there's everything. So from that perspective, it would have made my life way more easier if those features, which I needed at that point in time, were there. Um,
But the flip side is you actually, in some places, hacked our platform to make it do things that it wasn't commercially doing already. And we've since commercialized some of the stuff that we built into doing other onto our customers doing. So there's a flip side to this. We didn't get everything we wanted out the box, but we built half of it ourselves in the product because it's customizable, and now we ship that to other people anyway. So there's swings and roundabouts.
yes, yes, yes. Absolutely,
Anything
absolutely.
else? What else didn't work that you wish had worked? In the
Um,
process, in the platform, whatever, in the audit, who knows?
I think in the process, I had very, absolutely amazing teammate. Mikhail Kipnis is one of the best person I've ever worked with.
Very
Very
true. I agree
supportive.
wholeheartedly.
And I don't think this would be possible at all without his support within this whole thing. So, but as I said, I think those features were one thing, and I've brought them up for the sake of it. But I would do things differently, but there wasn't anything which didn't really 100% work. Like there was blockers, but they were not like, oh, I can't do it, so we won't do it. That type of thing.
Pause that thought. Any more questions? Now is your chance to put them in the Q&A. There are no stupid questions. Even if they're stupid, I'll answer them anyway, so don't worry about it. And in the meantime, a deal, while that is or isn't happening, you said there's things you would have done differently.
Correct.
Expound that line of thought. What would you have done differently that we didn't do this
Hey,
time correctly?
since we finished our certification, you know how many new features we have? So I would do things wildly differently.
Because
So
of the capabilities you now have in the
exactly,
product out of the box that we didn't have
exactly,
before. That's a good
exactly.
thing.
It's
Our
amazing. Yeah,
product's
it's
got better.
amazing. So it's not like it's not in that sense that I would do things differently in a sense of, oh, I wouldn't use that. It's more of those hacks, those things which I had to work around things and come up with some solution where we can still bring things back into anecdotes. Now we can do it by feature. For example, one thing which is my favorite, I was waiting for it for a very long time, is the findings in the framework now.
Yeah.
Meaning, my ISO related items which I'm working on, I don't need to go share it or save it in Jira anymore. I have it in anecdotes. I can then utilize it there, work on them, progress, report. And then when, how you call it, those findings are related to audit, or it's just an improvement, or if something comes from you, something comes from me, I can implement that there. One thing. So the second thing is the capability of actually creating the plugins yourself. Yeah, you do the custom evidence, you do the merge of evidence. Those things were literally on the last, stages, and I
Yeah,
couldn't.
evidence merge was one that came out right at the death. It's really helpful. I mean, what
So,
it does say though, which is good, is like you as a practitioner and our customer base as a practitioner. One of the things I like behind us, one of the reasons I'm still here, is like we actually listen and build based on what people need. And yes, we were a little bit lagged in getting our own product features out to ourselves, but
our,
we built the stuff that we needed anyway.
true that, true that. I think that's one thing. which I probably you heard me. You were the only person I was complaining to. I need this one to get this.
Everyone complains to me, Adeel. It's the job of being a CISO. If there's any CISO on the call, that's literally our job. People complain to us and we have problems to fix. I don't know what else I actually do. Let's deal with the 3 questions that are there, or 4 questions that are there, and then we will wrap. And any further questions, it's not hard to find either Adeel or me via email. You take first dot last name at anecdotes.ai, or find us on LinkedIn and fill any questions you want. Anonymous attendee, do we connect to MS Azure? I thought I said Ms. Azure at first. Yes, we do, and to Entra and to everything else in the Microsoft estate. So yes, is the answer to that question, the same as we do for GCP and AWS. We're built in GCP. That doesn't affect what we do and don't connect it. Mike Phillips, your built-in AI, is it dynamic enough that if you wanted to provide additional context to a risk or control, then it would use that additional context to evaluate the risk or control differently? You're asking a brilliant question. And to Adeel's point of we're developing products, yes, we are very nearly there. In fact, you can do it now with some. So a lot of our customers are starting to stand up an MCP server in front of Anecdotes. And with that, you definitely can. So you could query a risk and then say, can you also please look at this and take that in context of the risk? E.g., like saying, here's our password policy. Is it any good? And they'd be like, yeah, it's all right. And like, is it effective? And it would look at your Okta or Jump Cloud, whatever it is, and say you've got a few users who have breached your policy. And then you might give it context and say, actually, they're contractors. They're not required to. Here's my org chart. And it would say, oh, actually, in that case, you're in control. Don't worry about it. Like, adjust your risk accordingly. So yes, 100%, you can currently do it, and it's being productized as we speak. I can. Anonymous attendee again. Anonymous attendee has loads of questions. I like this. How does the pricing work? Do you pay for a framework, or does it come with limited frameworks, whatever is available on your platform? We don't believe in charging per framework. We think that's fundamentally broken as a method that's used in the market currently. We'll give you every framework we've got, plus the ability to build custom frameworks and anything else you want to build out of the box. If you want to deal with Goldman Sachs and build their 600-question TPRM questionnaire as a custom framework, knock yourself out. We charge on a base rate of users and what we call UDAs, which is to do with the amount of data that's being ingested by the platform. I'm not a salesperson, but if you want to become unanonymous and ask me, I will get one of the people to explain who are better and correctly employed to do that role, so I don't say the wrong thing and end up with our lawyers messaging me tomorrow. It'd be great for Amy Knapp to read a slapdash blog from Adeel about what he had to build and then what feature was made available and is now used since he built. Adeel, you should write that. I agree. Maybe Adeel, you should write a blog about the stuff that we hacked and how much of it is now a product or is now a feature in the product.
Yeah.
Don't expect it before Christmas because we have another real compliance challenge currently we're trying to deal with in another framework we're going after. But Amy, yes, I promise Adeel will do that at some point. If not, I will do it on his behalf. Last question. Anonymous attendee again. Which controls ended up giving you the biggest bang for your buck across all 3 standards? Adeel, 3 controls that you think are the most important if you're going to try and meet all 3 standards and the
I
most automated
I
evidence.
wouldn't say 3 controls. I would say the most of the clauses of the
Yeah,
ISO standard, which are very manual, where you have to bring in very manual evidence. Those were the key challenges for me to not bring screenshots. For example, as I say, internal audit report, internal audit,
yeah.
objectives. How am I actually managing my, continuous service improvement plan register? All of those things were very um, hard to come up with a solution in that sense of making sure that I'm not going back and then downloading a PDF and then attaching that PDF into Anecdotes. I wanted it to be reviewable. I wanted it to be continuous. I wanted it to be live. So you don't have to do anything in order to present. So that took a lot of time to come up with the solution and then implement it in a way that is repeatable, monitor, we can monitor it, and then of course auditable.
And speaking as a CISO, the stuff that you automate in the clauses, which I've traditionally known as just being documentation hell, was pretty staggering. I'm going to wrap up there. If you want to learn more, anecdotes.ai or either of us, we just created and launched a Christmas gift store on our website. You should go and look. Some of the puns are genius. I believe they go to Shimmy, that was the voice in the sky, has been the expert who created it. It's definitely worth a look. It'll be on my LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn or Adeel if you want to learn more about what we do and how we do anecdotes. If you want to learn more about the product, reach out to one of us or go by the website or have a look and send us a DM. Adeel, you are genuinely one of the best in the business. He is mine. You can't have him. So it is always an absolute pleasure to hear and see you speak about how you do what you do because you are literally one of the best in your profession. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise with me and with everyone else who joined and everyone else who's going to listen afterwards on the recording.
Thank you very much, Jake. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm hopeful that this will be useful for people who are joining and who will get the recording.
100%. And thank you to everyone who joined. Thanks for your questions. Anonymous attendee, you win for being the most curious and inquisitive person on today's call. So thank you. We will see you all soon, but happy holidays. Have a good period. I hope you get to spend time with your loved ones, family, and do things that matter more than GLC. Speak to you all
Thank you,
soon. Take
everyone.
care. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.